Welcome back, guys. This is a video that I was really excited to make, and I'll go into the reasons why in just a few minutes. But this desktop that you're looking at is the Manjaro, the new release of Manjaro in the LXDE version. Now, it is. It took me a little while to configure because I'm just not used to working with Arch. And so I had a little bit of difficulty, and I was able to get all of my issues resolved, and I'm going to go into that with you in detail. If you look at the system, this computer is my main computer, and it's normally not the computer that I do the videos on. But I wanted to try Manjaro, and so I decided to install it side by side with other Linux distributions on this computer. Now, as you can see, I've got a Core i7 4790K. I've got 32 gigs of RAM. I'm sorry, 32 gigs of RAM. And I'm running a GeForce NVIDIA GTX 760. And so it is, probably a higher end computer. And so some of the components within this computer are sometimes troublesome, especially not so much in Ubuntu, but with Debian, I've had difficulty with the Broadcom Wi-Fi and the NVIDIA drivers. And so I always like learning something new, and I had heard some good reviews on the new Manjaro distributions. So I decided to give it a try. Now, first I installed the Fluxbox version, which and I'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a few minutes. But I ultimately decided to put this LXDE version. And the reason is, not the least of which, the main reason is that I am a little more familiar with the LXDE desktop environment. Uh, I'm not familiar at all with the Fluxbox. So I do like learning something new, and I do plan to learn Fluxbox. But this gave me a little bit more of a comfort factor, starting off with Arch. Now, I have to say that the desktop that you boot into is what you're looking at. I haven't changed the wallpaper, I haven't changed the icons. Everything is pretty much the same, and it is really nice. I'm going to leave it just the way it is because they did a great job. If you look at the icons along the bottom, it's very colorful. Just overall, really, really good, really terrific. So I'm going to leave that as it is. One of the things I wanted to show you is they're using the Linux 4.1.6. Now, I believe that's the latest, and I'll go into a few issues with you on that, but I'm happy that it's running that 4.1. So let's get into some of the reasons that I'm making this video, and it's not really to review the Manjaro distribution, although I am going to go over it in a little bit of detail. But mainly I wanted to go into some of the issues that I faced when I downloaded the distribution. And in order to do that, I'm going to pull up the website. Now, this is the Manjaro Linux website. I did install the Fluxbox version. And but then I went into the community distributions, which are listed down at the bottom here. Manjaro stable repository, and I clicked on community, and that's where it brings up all of the various desktop environments that Manjaro has a distribution for. So you can download Fluxbox, LXQT, LXDE, GNOME, Netbook, OpenBox i3, Cinnamon, PEC, Mate, and Enlightenment. Now, I am not familiar with some of these. However, you can see that Fluxbox is extremely popular. Number of downloads, GNOME, Cinnamon. But I elected to go with LXDE. And so that's what you're looking at here. Now, when I first installed, the first one that I downloaded and installed was Fluxbox. Now, I had difficulty with the UEFI install. I wanted to go UEFI, it would not install, it would not boot. I ended up installing it Legacy, and it did boot, but I ended up having to dedicate an entire drive to it, which I really didn't want to do. And so what I did was I went ahead and installed it Legacy, booted up, started to learn a little bit about it, and then I decided to go to the Manjaro forum to ask some questions. And that's really the crux of this video. The Manjaro Linux forum has several categories, but being that I'm not new to Linux, but being that I am new to Arch, I decided to go to the newbie corner, as you can see right here. So I'm just going to go, because I've been very busy on the forums. So I'm going to go and take a look at some of the issues that came up with my original Fluxbox install. The first thing, once I installed it legacy style, I didn't know how to install my Broadcom Wi-Fi drivers. And so, and my username on the website, on the Linux forum, on the Manjaro forum is Lendy27. Okay, so anytime you see anything there, you can see all of the questions that I've asked. I've been extremely busy. But I decided to install it on this computer because this computer is a little bit funky as far as the Wi-Fi and the NVIDIA. The computer that I have, that I do most of my videos on, is a run-of-the-mill internal graphics, nothing unusual, pretty much anything installs, and I don't have any issues. But this one is a little bit more eccentric. So I posted a question: how do I install my Broadcom Wi-Fi drivers? And I immediately got a response from Olirik. Now he's got 60 posts, but he responded with some information here, which I researched, and I responded, "Thank you for your help, that worked fine." So immediately, my first question was answered extremely quickly, and I was able to get the drivers installed. Now, the only thing I had to do after reading this was install Broadcom-WL. That installed it, and that gave me my Broadcom Wi-Fi. Now, but I wasn't done there, and I was pretty impressed by that pretty easy solution. Then I came back and said, I like pSensor to monitor my temperatures inside my machine, fan speed, things like that. So I come back, is there an equivalent to pSensor? Because I couldn't find pSensor in the when I did a search, um, it said not available. First, I got a response with uh, an alternative, which was great. But then I got a response telling me I should enter this command. Now, I wasn't aware of the uh, Arch user repository. And this command here, yaourt space dash capital S space psensor, installed psensor. And here it is right here. So, wow, that was great. I couldn't believe it. Getting all kinds of assistance here. So I'm 2 for 2. So I figure, why stop there? So I come back. Where can I designate startup programs? Now, startup programs in the Fluxbox version is handled in a startup file, which I was able to locate, and using this format, I was able to get all of my startup programs running in the Fluxbox version. Now, in this version, which is the LXDE version, if you go to Preferences, Default Applications for LX Session, you'll find all your autostarts there. It's a little easier than using the command line. But again, I was able to get both of them working. And so I was on a roll, and I came back, how do I run a bash installer? Now, the reason I wanted to run the bash installer is within Ubuntu and Debian, I can install my Brother printer by running a bash command to install the driver from the Brother website. And I was not able to do that. It would not install. And so it was the wrong type of file. I couldn't find the right file on the Brother website. So this one here, I went back and forth, and I was not able to get my printer going. Now, I got a lot of information, and I went through a lot of information on how to get that printer configured. And there are tutorials within the Manjaro forum website that helped me a lot. But to make a long story short, once I followed all the instructions, I it saw my printer, which I will show you. It it saw my printer, and I was able to get it to show as configured, but it would not print. It kept saying printer not connected. And so what happened is I ended up going to the printer, unplugging it, plugging it back in. Once I did that, it did configure the printer. It did start working. So I do have my printer working in the LXDE and in the Fluxbox version. So that problem ended up to be solved, and I'm going to go into that printer issue a little bit more because it went beyond this bash install question. So then I asked for a caffeine equivalent, and because I like running caffeine to stop my screensaver when I need to. And this here was not available any longer. But when I entered this, I put the question up, and Fade Mind came in. He's on the support team. These are all terrific people, by the way. Came in and gave me this information. When I went to this website, I found that this caffeine citrate has been replaced by caffeine NG. I installed that and it works perfectly. So up to this point, every question has been answered and resolved, but I wasn't done yet. So in the Fluxbox version, I asked about how can I install apps? Is it only through command line? Because I had been using command line up to that point. And again, I got an answer from Oberon. Now, Oberon is also on the support team, and his name will come up a little bit more in the rest of this video, but rest assured, absolutely knowledgeable, terrific, very, very helpful. So he told me about PAMAC, PAMAC, and so again, the question was answered and resolved quickly. Now, then I asked, can I add Fluxbox to an existing XFCE install? Because I did try the XFCE version. And I was going to install Fluxbox so that I could learn Fluxbox. And then I was given some information on that, how to install other desktop environments. And I didn't decide to go that route, but I did have all the information I needed with this response. So again, I was absolutely amazed at the amount of cooperation and willingness to help on the Manjaro forum. And so if we go to page 1, you'll see some other issues that came up. Now, I'm going to do the printer first. So I put a question up, how do I install my Brother wireless printer? That's where I was advised that there are drivers for that in the community or the Arch repository, which I installed, and then I got some more information on how to install the scanner, because it's an all-in-one computer, I mean an all-in-one printer. Then, since I couldn't, when I put in localhost 631, nothing was coming up. It says page not available. Well, that's because I didn't have the services enabled. So again, another maintainer, AJ Sly, gave me these two commands, which when I entered those into the terminal, it gave me the configuration screen. Now, at that point, I ended up getting my printer to show, but when I tried to print the test page, it said printer not responding, and then when I tried to print an email, it said filter failed. So I put that information up along with a screenshot so they could take a look at what I was seeing, because this is what I was seeing. And as you can see, my printer is listed along with the IP address, but it says printer is not responding. So, and it showed as being configured, so I put that question up. Well, before I could get a response, I ended up unplugging the printer and turning it back on again, and everything printed. So I thanked them for their help. And let's get back to the last issue, the UEFI install. This here went on for quite a long time. What I did was I advised the community by putting a questioning up saying that I had tried to install the UEFI version, but it would not install. And so That's when I started getting all kinds of responses. Chrysostomus asked which installer I used. Oberon jumped in from the support team, and he stayed with me all the way through. And you guys can take a look at this on the website. But I went back and forth with Oberon, Oli Rick, and basically what happened is they were aware of an EFI situation. So they suggested that I use a program that they had been working on that has not been implemented yet. But it's a new installer called Calamaris. And what I did is I installed the Fluxbox version. Now I booted from the EFI boot off the USB rather than the legacy. When I got to the screen, the install screen, I opened a terminal and I installed Calamaris just as if I was installing any other program. Well, Calamaris pulled up another installer. I followed along and it was amazing. Calamaris is so intuitive. It gives you so many different options for install. It made it so easy that when I finished the install, it installed it on the and I was doing Fluxbox. It installed it on the same hard drive as my LXDE. And to make a long story short, um, I was just amazed at the amount of help that was provided, especially by Oberon. But the other individuals that I mentioned were so helpful also. And as you can see, this went back and forth. There's another page. It went back and forth, and I was able to get both Fluxbox and LXDE version installed EFI on the same disk, Grub installed correctly. The Grub screen comes up with both options. So I have both the Fluxbox and the LXDE version installed on one drive on my main machine, and I could not be happier. It's still new to me, and I'm still learning Arch, but I've been able to configure this system just as I would any other Linux distribution that I've tried. And I have to say that the Manjaro installs, the Manjaro distributions, at least the two that I've tried, they just feel so much quicker. Everything feels terrific. Now, the only issue that I have had is that, and this will get us back to the NVIDIA drivers. But let me go down to the bottom here because I was going back and forth, back and forth. They gave me other solutions, and but Calamaris, as you can see, my last post, success. I ran the Calamaris installer, which as an option offered me the ability to replace an existing partition with the Fluxbox install. Very nice. Haven't seen that in any installer before. I selected the partition that would not boot. The installer then automatically selected the proper boot configuration, and it did all the work. When it was done, I rebooted, and the grub screen showed the Fluxbox install as the first install and my LXDE install as the second option. Both options work flawlessly. You guys have done a tremendous job with the Calamaris installer. Outstanding. It's actually the most intuitive, user-friendly installer I have seen. Thank you so much for all the help. And then I went on to tell them that I was going to do a YouTube review. Now, this I did a video last week about my top 10 Linux distributions, and I hadn't yet tried Manjaro. But this Manjaro, first of all, it's the community that impresses me. They are so extremely helpful. I've been able to get all of my issues resolved. I'm just amazed. When I went from Ubuntu to Debian, Debian also has a reputation of being not very user friendly and a little bit difficult to configure coming from Ubuntu, which kind of does everything for you. Well, when I was going through my Debian learning curve, I went to the Debian forum and I did not get the same level of help and cooperation, I have to say. The Debian, while the Debian, there are some great Debian people, and the Debian community overall, I'm sure, is very good. But I got the impression that if you're trying to use Debian on the desktop, you're pretty much on your own to learn on your own, do your own research, and find your own solutions. When I was asking questions on the Debian forum, basically I was told that you know Debian is used mainly for servers, and Debian is pretty much strictly non-free. I'm sorry, is open source. And if I wanted to get into non-free, like the NVIDIA proprietary drivers, then kind of shame on me, and see if you can work things out on your own. So I was a little bit put off by the Debian community. And as I said, I'm sure that I did meet some helpful people. But I have to say that coming from Ubuntu and Debian over to Manjaro was an absolutely wonderful experience. The community over at Manjaro, they are just outstanding. So if you've been a little bit reluctant to try Manjaro because of the reputation that Arch has of being, not for newbies, more for intermediates, I would say give it a chance, because the Manjaro community, they have put together a, a series of distributions, Manjaro or Arch distributions, using various desktop environments. I'm sure you can find something that you're comfortable with. And if you have any questions, the community is there to help you. As I said, I'm new to Arch, and I had several issues, and I was able to get most of them resolved in a few hours. And that to me is amazing. Now, as I mentioned, the only issue that I had was I tried to install the BattleNet through Play on Linux, and I have not been able to get that working as of yet. But I'm going to continue on, and that's not an Arch issue. That's more of a wine issue. My other only issue was when I installed and I'm going to show you. Let's see if I can find that. If you look at Manjaro Settings Manager, you will see that there are not many settings to configure, but the hardware detection, as you can see, it gives you the option to automatically install a proprietary driver. If you click that, it's going to give you the newest NVIDIA driver, which for me was 352. However, when I installed 352, and everything worked fine until I installed Kodi Media Center. When I installed Kodi Media Center, my system froze. I had to reboot, and I had a feeling it was the graphics driver. So I chose to install the 340 version instead. So I uninstalled the 352, backed it down to 340, and everything's been fine. So the answers are there, and I guess my point is, if you want to try Manjaro, which I believe you should, absolutely fantastic distribution. If you want to try Manjaro, pick one of the desktop environments that you're comfortable with. They've got cinnamon, so that at least you'll have a comfort factor with the desktop environment and getting around the system. And that's why I went to LXDE. I'm more familiar with LXDE. So if you do that and you install a desktop environment that you're comfortable with, and then later you want to try Fluxbox, then of course that'll be much easier for you. Now, as I said, I'm running LXDE and I have Fluxbox on another partition on this same hard drive. And I am going back and forth and I'm having a ball. It's absolutely wonderful. And I know if I run into a problem, the community, the Manjaro forum community will be there to help me. So guys, I have to give the Manjaro community 10 stars, 10 out of 10. Absolutely the most helpful community that I have seen within Linux. And that includes all of my previous favorites. I still love Linux Lite. I love Peppermint 6. And they are very helpful. But since they're a little bit smaller, sometimes you have to wait a little longer for your response. Manjaro, they were right there almost immediately. Absolutely fantastic. And since I have my printer working on both flavors, I have my printer working now in Fluxbox and in LXDE. So since I have my printer working, there's nothing that I cannot do. I could survive day in, day out very nicely with the Manjaro distributions. And actually, it's really all I'm going to run on this main computer for the time being because I'm really enjoying it. So that's going to wrap up this rather lengthy video. Guys, I hope you enjoyed some of the information. I do hope that you'll give Manjaro a try. It really is worth it, and I think you'll find the community response extremely refreshing. And I I will definitely be making a donation to the Manjaro community. They are such a hardworking group. They deserve my support for all that they've done for me the last couple days. So guys, that's it. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Take care.